Good afternoon, everybody. DMGeezerjim here for another episode of our monster fight stuff. We're going to look at the Ankheg today. Three things to know about using an Ankheg in combat as a DM. A very, very versatile critter. Ugly as heck. Pretty good for a challenge for a low-level party. A couple, two or three of those can be a light encounter. A meeting random encounter for a mid-level party, not necessarily something that's going to be very stout for a high-level party. So let's look at a couple things about the Ankheg. First thing, as always, we're going to look at the stats. Second thing we're going to do is kind of take a look at how, the environment of these guys. And the third thing is that we're going to look at is their instant dungeon makers. And you might be like, what? So we'll talk about those things. First and foremost, let's start out with our big ugly bug and the stats. Okay, an Ankheg is a large monstrosity, unaligned, armor class of 14, natural, 11 while prone. There's nothing in the stat block that makes you put the Ankheg prone, so keep that in mind. I believe that the idea was while they're digging they would be prone, so if you get them in their tunnels they have a lower armor class, but I statistically can't find a reason. Rule-wise, I can't find a reason unless your targets or unless your party's able to knock it prone, in which case it'll have a lower armor class. Okay, hit points 39 is not that much. It's a CR2 monster. It's a lower level monster, a lower level creature. 6d10 plus 6, so we could look at as high as 66 hit points, which still doesn't make it a huge nasty beast. So, statistically speaking, it's not rough. It's not heavy. It's not going to be a super hard hitter, but it can be a fun creature for just a generic encounter to change things up a little bit. Bite attack plus 5 to hit, which is actually okay for its rating. Reach of 5, 2d6 plus 3 slashing plus 1d6 acid. And it's grappled unless it makes a DC 13 escape. Now, the downside is if you bite something and grapple it, the only thing that your Ankheg continue biting is the grappled creature, but you have an advantage on it, okay? The downside is they're dumb as dirt, so you can't necessarily run it past five fighters straight at the cleric and munch on the cleric. A low intelligence is going to dictate it's going to hit the first creature it sees and notices as food. So make sure you're paying attention to the intelligence on it. Don't try to use that ability, even though tactically you could. The intelligence behind the creature is not going to push you in a situation where you're going to use this ability to attack the squishiest, weakest person in your group. Acid spray with a recharge of 6 is a 30 feet long, 5 feet wide acid spit. As long as the Ankheg doesn't have something grappled, okay? So if I got a critter in my mouth, if I got a bad guy in my mouth, a player in my mouth, I can't spit acid at everyone else. So that's the balancing action on your Ankheg. When you bite something, there's a chance that you're going to end up grabbing it. Your acid spray is on a recharge. It's DC 13 or take 3d6 damage. Not the most damage. So, the combat abilities of our Ankheg are not very high. It doesn't have any special resistances, doesn't have any special immunities, mediocre armor class, mediocre hit points, mediocre damage. So it's a good grunt trooper. It's a good rando encounter. It's a good space filler type of encounter. Now, the downside is with their intelligence, they're not necessarily trainable, so you're not going to have short of using magical influence, you're not going to have a lair of a bad guy guarded by a bunch of Ankhegs. These are just gigantic centipedes that roam around underground eating stuff. Second thing to keep in mind, first thing was their stats. Moderate challenge, 2 or 3 of these could be a pretty good fight for a level 3 group, level 3 to 5. One of these would be a scary encounter for a level 1 group. I don't necessarily know that I would do that just because the damage output could potentially down a character in one hit. So I don't know that an Ankheg has much business being played before level 2, just to at least give your players the chance to not get one-shotted by the sucker. So, second thing is its environments. It requires a lot of food. It feeds off of nutrients in the earth as well, but it needs proteins. Ankhegs are typically found in temperate environments where they're going to have access to livestock, where they're going to have access to things to hunt, meat, proteins, if you will. So your Ankheg is actually a creature that will be closer to civilization in a lot of situations. You can use these in your outlying farm areas. You can use these out in the woods. You can use these in the ranch encounter 50 miles away from your starting town that your players need to go. Ankheg provide good short-term, mid-term quest opportunities in temperate environments. They're not going to be in any situations where, number one, they can't dig solid tunnels. Number two, that they can't find protein. They're not going to live up in the tundra areas. They're not going to live in frozen ground where it's a challenge for them to dig. They're not necessarily going to inhabit swampy areas because they're not amphibious. They can't breathe water, so they're not going to tunnel through liquefied mud. They're not going to live in desert areas because, again, they're a tunneling creature. The sand would collapse on them as they tunnel. So they're primarily going to be centered around a temperate environment, okay? When you got this big, bad, ugly, nasty bastard, like I said, the single best place to use this in is farmlands, pasture lands, ranch lands, things like that. Or pastoral areas within a day's ride of your community, your town, your quest hub, whatever, okay? Because of their dependence on the environmental factors, you are limited in the scope the scope that these guys can live. They're going to need access to food. They're not smart enough to stay far away from society. So Ankheg can and should be a regularly occurring enemy, a natural predator in most of the temperate areas if you're going to include them. They're not considered rare. They're not considered unusual. They're not considered magical. They're big-ass bugs that dig around underground, surfacing underneath, which can lead us to number 3. How do we use them and the fact that they actually create dungeons? Dungeons being a very loose catch-all term. An Ankheg is large, which is going to mean it's going to be a 2-square, roughly 8-foot-ish, a large creature. So we could assume that as it digs a tunnel, the tunnel is going to be wide enough for its body to go through, which is going to be a 4-foot, 5-foot wide tunnel. A collection of winding 4-foot, 5-foot wide tunnels with a couple extra little dugouts here and there. Lo and behold, you have a dungeon. You have a cave system. So one of the advantages of using an Ankheg in your encounters is you can very easily expand the encounter into an underground thing. If you're needing to connect the party to a hidden temple somewhere underneath that is 50 miles or 5 miles away from your major city, lo and behold, a network of Ankheg tunnels could lead your party down to this long-lost hidden crypt. You can fill these tunnels with other Ankhegs. You can fill these tunnels with some bodies, with some loot, some stuff like that. So remember, your Ankhegs do not walk around on the ground as a rule. They burrow underground. They come up to a certain point, and they wait below the surface to detect food. So that's the other thing to keep in mind in regards to their tunneling habits, their combat habits. They are ambush predators. You should feel absolutely free to use these guys with surprise attacks as ambush predators. They're not aligned. They're not intelligent. They're monstrosities. They're not going to be detectable, okay? They can sit a foot or 2 foot beneath the ground waiting for someone to walk over them. They're going to come up underneath, grab homie, and do their work. If you want to have some fun, remember they move underground at all times. Their preferred method is tunneling and burrowing. You have Mr. Ankheg grab a player or grab quest escort MacGuffin, disappear underground and run back into the tunnels, and lo and behold, now your party needs to hunt this Ankheg down through a warren of earthen tunnels and caverns and the like. So that's the last thing that we want to kind of talk about with your Ankheg. Even though it's kind of a plain Jane monster, the environmental factors, the encounter factors that can lead from their presence can be something you could build on greatly. You have a creature here that automatically digs 5-foot tunnels as part of its movement. So you have every opportunity to have your players exploring these tunnels and connecting these tunnels to something bigger, or having them run into more Ankhegs or anything like that. But yeah. Like I said, Ankhegs are fun critters. Like I said, there's nothing super impressive about them other than their burrow ability allows you to use them as pretty good ambush predators at low and mid levels. Their tunneling ability is going to allow you to leave a network of tunnels and caverns that your party can then follow into whatever MacGuffin you need, or you can extend the mission out if you need to. If you don't necessarily need them or want your players going into tunnels, then you have them pretty much collapsed. Basically, the Ankheg has to dig its way back in and out, small semi-collapsed tunnels that will limit the creature's movement. Now, last little bit on combat in this video. They have a movement speed of 30, walking, a burrow speed of 10. An Ankheg is not going to keep up with anyone moving underground. But while it's underground, unless your players follow it into the tunnel, an Ankheg is not targetable. It's not touchable. You can't shoot what you can't see. You can't hit what you can't reach. So don't be afraid of using their tunneling ability for hit and run attacks. You're limited to 10 feet. And one thing to keep in mind is they are large, so the tunnel will be large enough for your players to follow them in. If your players are dumb enough to jump down an Ankheg tunnel and chase them in there, I say dumb with air quotes, you can have a lot of fun making them miserable. Or you can reward them with a killing blow. It doesn't, your table, your rules, your decision. But make sure that you're using the burrow method for its attack. Make sure you're using burrowing for escape. Make sure if you retreat underground. Don't go scampering and running off across the ground. The Ankheg's at a disadvantage there. They have dark vision to 60 feet. They have tremor sense to 60 feet. I don't care how stealthy your rogue is. I don't care how invisible your scout is. When they come within 60 feet of an Ankheg, the Ankheg knows where they are. It can begin burrowing towards them and ambush them. Do you need to play that on a battle map? No, you're the DM. You just happen to have 3 or 4 Ankhegs that have been tracking your party and set up the perfect ambush. Boom, you're hit. Okay? But hey, yeah, DMGeezerjim here. Going to go ahead and close out this quick little video. We're talking about the Ankheg, a large monstrosity, an oversized centipede, kind of a bug lizard. Way scarier looking than it actually is. The art on it, and it's always been that way. These creatures look really rough. To be fair, they have diminished in difficulty over the course of D&D, which I think is a good thing, because now they're weak enough, small enough where you can use a lot of them. You can use them quite often and quite common. But yeah, take a look at the Ankheg. It's a good foot soldier creature. It's a good filler encounter. It's something that changes the dynamics a little bit, gives you an area effect attack, can be a threat to the party without being unassailable. It's moderate armor class for a low-level creature. So armor class is pretty low for mid-level. Hit point count is not a ton. So this is an easily defeatable creature, but still can provide some threat. Above all else, remember, wherever you put Ankhegs, you also have a built-in dungeon/cavern/tunnel system if you choose to use it. So be prepared on the flip side of that for your players to decide to go down the hole and see where these tunnels lead. Good and bad with that, but hey. DMGeezerjim here, going to go ahead and sign off on our monster fight video. 3 things to know about an Ankheg. Know how its stats work, know where it lives, and know how to use its tunneling ability and its tunneling networks, good and bad, to extend your adventures, extend the difficulty and the challenge, and maybe provide access to parts of the map, parts of your world that would otherwise be too obvious if they were in place. But hey, thank you for your time. Hope you've enjoyed the video. As always, I'm over on Twitch Monday to Friday, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're chatting monsters, chatting whatever we feel like chatting today. I invite you to join me over there for a live chat. Join me over on Etsy if you want to support some of these projects. And always, feel free to like, follow, subscribe, and share these videos. Would love to hear any comments about that, about the videos. We're trying to focus on official 5Es, but if you have any suggested monsters that you want me to run a review on, drop it in the comments. We'll take a look at it. Y'all be safe. Take care.